Okay. So hello everyone. Welcome to the Super Facility API training at NERSC. And in this workshop, you will learn how to use the SF API for your project. So we're going to start off with a little talk about the API, why we made it, and how it's used in projects. Then we're going to go into the authentication bit because that's a major part of the API. So you will learn how to make your own client and get credentials for it. And then we're gonna show you how to use the API with the Swagger UI, which is just more or less for checking if your tokens are correct. And then we're gonna move over to the application side if you want to put the API into your project. So we're gonna introduce the Python library for it, called SF API Client, and also a Julia library, which is brand new. So you have two different languages to include your API into your projects. So in the form for the sign up, I asked everyone to kind of like put in, what do you want to use the API for? And so I just like picked a few um, that I thought are kind of representative for a number of cases. So we have like on one corner, we have a lot of people of you that just want to learn how to use the API or take a look at it and evaluate it. Or some just want to hang out and absorb. That's totally cool. Some of you are more expert users that want to have like a project in mind and say like, I don't want to use the API and integrate it into my workflow. I want to, looking into cross-facility workflows. So I want to, make some workflow for AI and some already know like, oh yeah, I need to process like data from my facility. So I'm looking into like getting like an automated workflow that processes data and saves it at NERSC, all this. So that's the work. There were some. There were also category that were just looking into throughput or like scale up the application. And for those of you who were looking for this, I kind of have like little bad news right away. So just because we're going to be using the API doesn't mean that your job's going to be running faster. The API is a interface layer. It observes the same policies under the hood. So only two jobs each at a time. And also, it's not a workflow manager. It just cannot give you like complex instructions. It's a REST interface to NERSC resources. So you can't actually say, do this and then do that. You have to let it to do this workflow on your end. And you have to go into Iris to get your credential. So the API gives you a longer lived credential if you go through security training. Otherwise, it's just 2 days for job submission or general code execution. So the API, just like NERSC all around, observes the MFA requirement. And we're still working on the movement part. So if you're mostly interested in movement, then Globus is the first place to go to. But I mean, a lot of you kind of figured that one out. So the API is pretty useful for many other things. So you can use it to interact programmatically with network resources. You can integrate it into your workflow managers as a kind of a backend connector. So you have like one instance local, and you say, okay, I want to do the same thing remotely at NERSC. You can use the API and wrap it in either like a client library or wrap it yourself, and then integrate into your workflow system. And you can also use it, uh, to inquire about your jobs, everything's going on, because there's like a lot of pass-throughs that go into Slurm. I have a little bit added, bling on the top. But so you can use it for monitoring, and then of course what the API also delivers you is up-to-date status or health information of the system. So that's kind of very important. If you say like, I want to do this and I want to go and look up at a web page to see if NERSC is up, the API will tell you the same information, if not more. All right, for today, that's what we're gonna, it's how the time is gonna be divided up. I will do, and then maybe I waited for the introduction for here because all the here are the photos of all the presenters. So I'm Bjorn. I'm in Data Science Engagement Group. The other two are Nick, who's in the data analytics group, and then Johannes, who's also in data science engagement group. So we three are going to be doing this. I will be doing like the basic part with like more slides and talking about the basics. Nick will talk about the SFAPI client, and Johannes will talk about the super facility um, uh, Julia. So the Julia library. Sorry, I was a bit confused. And then we are hoping to have a little time over in the end. It's not practice, so we can't be sure, but we hope there's time over. So if you guys have some questions afterwards or download the notebooks to follow on, we can help you out. We have the little time in the end to help you out. Some people will drop off, and we hope there's some time for discussion or some other things in the end to target your questions or anything, really anything. So we do provide notebooks and some scripts for this. So if you want to use it, I think it's best that you have a working NERSC account. I think it was limited the subscriptions for this to NERSC users, so you should have a working NERSC account. Um, just the normal stuff, you computer with a terminal and browser and stuff and all sorts of just like basic internet access. Should be able to understand Python. It's great if you understand Julia as well for Johannes' part. Um, you can also like kind of think about what you want to run. So then, maybe we can pick it up later in the Q&A and then, save your opinions and criticism, for our feedback for after the training. And this is the second workshop, and we actually had quite a number of signups. So we can't, in the first one, we just stopped and then let anyone do the exercise questions and, got in discussion so everyone can fix the exercise. We don't have the time for this now. It's too many people and we don't not enough instructors. So instead, it's going to be a bit more like a demo type presentation. So we're going to walk through with you, and then maybe there's some breaks for you to catch up. But this will be recorded, and the notebooks will be online, so you can go and go through it afterwards, at your own pace. So you don't actually have to, frantically try to keep up with this. You can just like do it at your own time afterwards. So you can also just like sit back, relax, enjoy, and listen to the presentations. Okay, so here is the link for the download. Does someone put it in the chat already?
I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Because we can't keep this slide up. But you can just Google it, SF API training and NERSC on GitHub, and that will show up. It's pretty easy to find. Yeah, just clone it to your home folder anywhere, and then you're good to go and to be able to follow. Okay, so let's talk about the API itself. It's called Super Facility API because, you know, we have a lot of collaborations with our facilities, and there was a project in the past that was called Super Facility Project, where we tried to make like it's a bit more say organize all our interactions and try to see if there were common denominators and services or functionalities these facilities need. So we wouldn't do peer-to-peer engagement, but instead like make like, okay, let's think about it for a moment and do like a few things that are relevant for a lot of projects. And the API is one of the things that came out of it. And because it came of the Super Facility project, it's called Super Facility API. And it's not an API on top of other APIs. It's just an API that came out of this project, and it's only for NERSC resources. So, and we developed it because like what these projects want, they wanted to do automation, they wanted to minimize the human in the loop. Some wanted, track a lot of jobs. And in creating like a REST API enables you to incorporate the API into your local setup. So in whatever your local workflow machine is, wherever you are, with REST calls, you can incorporate the API into your system without actually having to go and log in without actually having to go to us or log in or do an SSH connection. So we're kind of hoping this to just be, if you're like a good if you're a very enthusiastic workflow developer, that you say, oh, I have a UI, and then I can have a button that says like I want to run the workflow here, press this button for the user, and then there's another button that says like I want to run the workflow at nurse, you know? Or you even have like a little like field that says nurse is up, and then you can press the button, right? Because you checked the status before. So that's kind of the vision for this API. And overall, we want the API to be a component that allows you to closely integrate the API into your workflow. Um, so the overall vision is that all nurse interactions are callable, the facility is seamless, automated, nurse inside workflows without a human in the loop. And we have implemented a few endpoints like status for health, accounting, account for like your balances, how many node hours you have left, in which projects you are, etc. I don't have all the endpoints here. There's a few more that have come up. Compute, of course, to submit jobs. In utilities, there's the command endpoint to run an arbitrary command. There's the task endpoint. If you use the client libraries, maybe that doesn't really come up for you, but the API is asynchronous under the hood because Slurm just doesn't have the responsiveness that you would need for like a web application or REST endpoint. So um, you submit your actions to a queue, and then Slurm will get to it when it has time. Not for all the endpoints, but for some. And then we have storage. This is for transferring data in between the storage tiers at NERSC. In the future, we hope there will be some mechanism to also go through other facilities. Okay, so how does it compare to manual interaction with NERSC? So if you want to check the status, for example, you could just SSH and ping, but if you use superficially A, you can just go and query the status endpoint, batch submission, SBatch. Now you can use the compute endpoint. For looking at the job, you can use the task or also the compute endpoint, etc., etc. I'm just gonna go all over this. You can have fun with the API later once you have a token. Okay, so like typical use case for the API would be one of those. I need to update the slide sometimes in the future to get a bit more diverse set of use cases. But one use case would be: are you at a facility? You pipe your data over, and then you want actually you're in the facility. You want to know, can I run my workflow at NERSC, right? So if you want to do this, the first thing you want to do is maybe check the status, like is NERSC up, yes or no. Then you create the status endpoint. Then you push the data over, and then once the data is there, you want to kick off computing tasks. That goes over the compute endpoint. You query with the task endpoint, and then maybe you have some other like custom things you want to do that isn't quite a job. Maybe just make a plot or something that doesn't really need to go through SBatch. Then you want to go to utilities command or some other of the smaller endpoints to go there and run this specific task. And then you might want to copy it back or put the data into the archive into a different storage tier at NERSC. Then you hit the storage endpoint again. And this is an old slide. Apologies, but there have been a lot of projects that have been using the API. But it's not really about the number of users that's interesting for us. For us, it's mostly like how much work it can actually do. So how many requests actually being carried out by the API. And a rough figure is that we have one request every 2 seconds. That was 2 years ago. I have to check the numbers, but I think we're probably at the same, if not a higher rate today. Okay, so a little bit about is there any question on the Q&A so far, Nick?
I've been answering a couple of them, but yeah.
Okay. If there's anything that needs to be brought up, you let me know.
Okay.
Okay. Um, okay, so just basic stuff about the API. Now you find at api.nurse.gov API version 1.2, and we've kind of been stuck at version 1.2 for a long time and don't see this changing so much. We keep the version in its current form. if there's no breaking change to the API, if we don't actually change the return values of the endpoints, or if we discontinue one or change it in any other radical fashion. So it will stay at this one. We're like committed to a 6 month cycle. Um, if we want to do something, there's 6 months overlay between retiring something and getting something new up. So the API is a REST API with JSON input output. We use like the OAuth dance to get credentials and tokens. And we do have user docs and examples. So if a lot of people have been going there and trying it out themselves, so there's some extensive documentation on our docs page. And we use Fast API for the API itself, and it comes with a Swagger page, so it's only the UI for you to interact with the API. So it's like the go-to place to check stuff first if you don't before you integrate into your workflow. And then once you require an access token, you can go there and do your stuff, except for the public endpoints, which you can just query without having any authentication. So the way the API is designed is actually that we try to keep it as thin as possible as a layer on top of other resources. Um, so we're piping through a lot of things more or less natively. It's not that doesn't do so much formatting, editing on top. So the endpoints are essentially like a thin layer on top of a nurse resource. If any of the resources underneath isn't responsive enough for the purpose of the API, it's gonna be your request is gonna be pushed off into an it's um, transformed into an asynchronous task and then put onto a message queue. And then underneath the hood, the workers will get to it in time. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it's just not responsive enough for, direct calls or just waiting for the response. So that's what happens. So if you submit a job, it will wait there, and then you have to query with the task endpoint how it's going. We host the API ourselves on our own cloud infrastructure in a secured instance. So it's all Dockerized, and it's all like different microservices connected to each other, and it runs like I said, runs on our cloud instance. So here's like something typical API process flow. The first part is just getting credentials. So when you create a client, we're gonna get to this in a second. It calls our OIDC instance. To get you the credentials, and then when you want the credentials to exchange for token, does the same thing again. Once you have a token, you go a level deeper, and you can go and into the API and make your calls. If it's asynchronous, it will move into the message queue, and the message queue will interact with Slurm under the hood. And I think Nick is gonna talk a bit more later about this. Okay. The client. So this is a kind of a big thing. It's maybe a bit more unusual, as you might be other APIs that are out there. So we do have to enforce MFA, and that means in order to get the credential, just like you would get an SSH credential, you actually have to go into Iris and make one for you, right? So um, we're going to show this in a second. But there's the flow. Essentially, you go in there, you create a super facility client in Iris. You need to specify a few things on the client to make it work properly for you. Then once it's created, you get the credentials. Like it's kind of just like a public-private key situation here. So you download your private key and you remember your client ID. Then you sign a client assertion with this one, and then ask our ODC server for an access token, and that one you can use the API. most of the client libraries, like the OAuth libraries in Python in Python or other languages, will do this for you already. But I'm going to show you this to do this in two ways. One in Python and the other one is in Bash. Okay, so how do you get to it? Um, in Iris, you have to go to the Profile tab and you have to scroll quite a long way down. And then is a section called Super Facility API Client. When you click to create a new client, it will open this pop-up menu for you. So you can give it a name that really doesn't matter. It's like just for your own to remember what kind of client that was. You can add comments if you actually need it. I actually never used it, but you can add some comments for you to, remember later. And then you can create clients for yourself and for all the collaboration accounts that you are in. That is very important for people who run automated workflows because they usually want that workflow to run as a collaboration user because the collaboration user stands for a group of people that are using this workflow. And it's quite an important feature for our partners. So he can use a collaboration user for this. And then it comes to another important part. Not all the endpoints are created equal. Some of them are a bit more, let's say, dangerous than others. So they require higher privileges. That's what we express here through the security level. So there's some that would just give you like some read-only information, or if information that is not so protected, like your account information, like how much nurse scouts you have in your account, which projects you are. Those are like kind of like low security actions. For this, you only need the green token, and it goes all the way up to the red token, which is submitting job or executing arbitrary commands. And on this one, it says it's valid for 30 days, but that's like an old version. Today, it's 33 days if you went through security screening. But for the general user, it's just 2 days, which is already better than 1 day that you get for an SSH token. But it's 2 days. And the idea is that if you develop a workflow, you in this part where you develop your workflow, you want to frequently get a new credential. But once you're kind of happy and your workflow is working and saying like this is good, it can go into production, then you can fill out the form on our help pages and ask, I want my workflow to be screened. And then it goes through our security screening, and then we say, yes, you treat the credentials the right way. We believe that you're doing everything correct. And then we grant you the ability to craft red tokens for 33 days. And that's just like a more easy for your workflow. You don't have to refresh like the credentials every 2 days. Then it's every month, roughly. So put a little box in your calendar that says, I need new credentials so that you don't forget to get new ones. Another security measure is that we limit the IP address range, like the points from the internet from which you can contact the API. And the higher the security level, the smaller these number of IP ranges become. So if you're red, you only get two IP address ranges, and if you're green, you get 16 IP address ranges. There were some requests in the early stages of this. It said like, yeah, I have a facility. We have like so many different computers, but I want to check the banking information from all of these different computers. And so that's kind of an application for the green token. Then you can just have that run it from everywhere in your campus or facility. Okay, so once you pressed that you want it, then you get all your credentials, treat the client credential just like an SSH key, put it in a location that only you have access to, and change the permissions so that no one can go and have a look at it. So 600 is the permissions we want you if you download it as a file onto your home directory. But you can also, if you have a warfare runs in Spin, you can also just download the credentials, put it as a secret in Spin. That's also permitted. Actually, I think it's even preferred. But yeah, we are actually quite flexible in how you want to store the secret. We just need to be sure when you go through the security review that you know what you're doing and that this credential is in the safe place. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do it. Feel free to go along yourself. Okay, gov. Saved my session. How convenient. You go through the profile tab, then you go down, down, down. To the section of supervisory API clients. So you can press on new client and you know, can call it whatever. Let's just call it test here. And then you can choose the collaboration accounts or your own account to create it for. Let's keep it for my own account here. These are the security levels. And I think if you want to do some like the little bit of access comes after yourself, we recommend that you go for a red token right away. Then you're going to select the IP address ranges. If you don't know them, we have some little widgets here, so it will be determined for you. I think I would always go for at least your IP and permanent nodes. So permanent nodes is important if you want to run it from Jupyter, because Jupyter runs on our on permanent, either on login nodes or on compute nodes. And the your home IP is important because you want to use it for if you want to run something through the Swagger page, which is rendered on your browser. So if you do anything that goes through the Swagger page, if any testing done to the Swagger page, you need the home IP preset in there. Okay. So now that you got this, you can download client ID, your private key. This is in the JSON web key format and also PM format. So once you have this, you can put this into like a safe folder in your home directory and change the permissions. So we already let's see what's next on the slides. Yeah, this is the instructions again. We recommend for ease of use to call the folder.superfacility. The client library works with other folders as well, but I think that's just the default, so it's easier for you to just like run it out of the box. Okay. All right. I think we covered this one already. One thing to note is your credential stays for the time that you like these like 1 day, 2 days, or up to 30 2 days or 60 days, depending on what kind of security level you chose. But you always have to go and you know, get an access token. You know, so even if you use like the auth libraries and in Python, you still have to go and request a new token every 10 minutes. So you can check what the expiration date is on the token and make this a bit more automatic, but you do have to request one. The tokens with which you access the API, they expire every 10 minutes. So here is the instructions to do this command line. In the old training, we asked you to do this yourself, and there was like a form where most people just kind of signed off. You don't do this anymore. But here are just the instruction for reference. They are also in our documentation, so you can just go and make bash scripts as you like. But we are not going to stop you and ask you to type in the commands. That's not workable. So let's do it instead over with a script or with a either in Python or as a bash script. So here, if you downloaded the from the GitHub repo, there's a IPython notebook called Token that you can use to create an access token. And what it does essentially is just goes and assumes there's like a folder where all the files are in, all the credentials are in, and then it reads out the credential and it uses the OAuth session, to create token for you. I'm just gonna run this here. Let's see. Ta-da! Quite easy. And then you can use this token to log into the to run something with the API. Oh yeah, there's a hand.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a question.
Yeah,
A
Danny.
quick question, Bjorn. Is there an expectation of a specific environment in order to run your Jupyter notebook?
These are pretty standard libraries.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking for? Or?
Yeah, this is being run in the NERSC Python
Yeah, this is
notebook,
the
which
nurse
is
Python. Yeah.
that's the default one for Jupyter.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
clone should have been done within somebody's account within NERSC. That wasn't clear to me.
Oh no, it's not limited to nurse, right? If you can any Python environment where you have these libraries available for you, you can just like go and do it. You don't have to use our Conda environment, but our default nurse Python Conda environment has all the libraries to do this for you. Okay, if you don't want if you don't want to use Python, another option is to use Bash. And in the GitHub repo, you find little a little shell script that will let you do it for you. Essentially just the instructions from our docs page, wrapped in a Bash script. And you can just run that one. And voila, you get an access token. Okay. Let's see. What do we have next? Yeah, if you don't want to be bothered with making client, but today you want to just like try a bit API stuff yourself and with the command line, you can just go ahead and go to the unauthenticated endpoints, which are the status endpoint. So if you run this command, like a curl against the status, and pipe it to JQ, you also get some information from the API back. In this case, it would be, if the API, if permit is active, yes or no. Okay, the next one that I'm gonna show you, gonna use the tokens now. Okay. So if you go to api.nurse.gov, API version 1.2, the Swagger page will come up. And here you can test the API out with the token you acquired, or you can also test it without the token, because there are some endpoints that are not that doesn't require authorization, which are here, the ones at the top. They don't have the lock here. The lock means that you don't need the absence of a lock means that you don't need authentication. Okay, so the easy ones, like for example, that you can read like the status. This will return like an overview of all of our systems and resources. And then you can see which resources are up and which are down. You can also go ahead and look at what outages are planned. And this will tell you like the upcoming outages that we have in our system, that our operations people logged, that those are the ones that are coming up. Okay. But now we can use the token. I'm not sure if that already expired. Just make a new one. So this one we can do for authenticated ones. Here is like account. It kind of asks you, sorry, sorry. You have to enter it in this authorization button in the top right corner. There you go. So now you should be able to make authenticated request against the API. I'm not going to do this because it will show you where all of my users and groups that are in. I'm in. But let's do something like that. Like a command, for example. Let's run a command. Do you know we're just asking for host name? Okay, of course. It's a command to it's a request to an asynchronous request. So what we get now in back as a task ID. Now we can query how the task is coming along. It's completed, and in the return message, you see the host name, what came back from the executable. It's the host name, and in this case, it ran on login 18, so you see the return from the command that you have run. Okay, I think yes, that was everything on my side. So now we do have a little time. We do have this little break. Now you can have some time, get a coffee or get something to drink, or you can go and go through the Swagger page and try some stuff for yourself. You can download the training material to get a token quick and easy. Just make a token in Iris first, save it in the .superfacility location, run the scripts to get an access token, and then use the Swagger page to do some interactions with the API. Make sure that you add UIP to the token because that's the one, because the Swagger page is rendered locally for you. So you need that in your IP address range for your credentials to get to have a token that's usable in the Swagger page. I think I'm just going to leave this one open, or unless you want to put me have me use a different slide. Yeah, I'm just going to leave this. So it's 10:13, and let's reconvene at 10:20. Okay, we're nearing 10:20. I'm just gonna stop sharing here because this part of the training is done by Nick. So Nick, are you ready to?
Yeah, let me just go get the right screen up and yeah, I can share.